And today we've got a guest host today. Sitting in for Tim Sheehy is Nancy Hernandez from the Hispanic Collaborative.
Hello, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Nancy Hernandez, and as you might be able to tell, I am not the MMAC president, Tim Sheehy. Tim is off today enjoying some well-deserved time with family, and I'm with the Hispanic Collaborative and sitting in as the guest host of our regular weekly webinar on Tuesdays from 11 to noon. Let's start off first with a programming note. The MMAC will not host a webinar on Tuesday, July 7th after the holiday weekend. Tim, Dr. Raymond, and our panel of guests will return on Tuesday, July 14th. The MMAC's mission is to develop Metro Milwaukee as a globally competitive region for businesses that deliver high-value jobs to foster a vibrant quality of life for all. This program provides actionable insights to the challenges and opportunities we all face in developing the region as a place to live, work, play, and learn. The Hispanic Collaborative is an affiliate of the MMAC. Our mission is to power greater economic growth by improving outcomes for Hispanics, the region's fastest growing population, with a goal to move Milwaukee into a top 10 city on the Hispanic Wellbeing Index through improvements in 3 key areas: median household income and prosperity, entrepreneurship, and civic engagement. We'll start today with an update on COVID-19 and its impact and the steps we can take to improve the health of people in our region. To do that, we will welcome in Dr. John Raymond, President and CEO of the Medical College of Wisconsin. Then we have a great panel lined up to share insights on what we can do to build the Milwaukee region's pipeline of diverse talent to fuel the economic recovery. We will be joined by Dr. Vicki Martin, President of the Milwaukee Area Technical College, Sarah Dollhausen-Clark, Executive Director of IC Stars Milwaukee, and Oscar Tovar, Vice Chair of the Hispanic Professionals of Greater Milwaukee and Staff Assistant to Milwaukee Mayor Tom Barrett. This webcast is powered by Aurora WDC, a Madison-based market and intelligence firm. They help us make faster and smarter decisions. Visit them at aurorawdc.com. And if you have questions during the program for either Dr. Raymond or any of our panelists, please submit them and we'll do our best to answer them in the second half of the program. So let's start, as we always do on Tuesdays, with an update from Dr. Raymond.
Thanks, Nancy, and good morning, everyone. We'll start with a summary of data that were obtained from 2:30 yesterday, and recall that most data gets refreshed in the mid-afternoon. So thus far, we've administered about 555,000 COVID-19 tests in Wisconsin and about 112,000 in Milwaukee. We have a cumulative number of 28,000 positive tests for a 5.1% positive rate in Wisconsin and 11,232 in Milwaukee for a 10% positive rate. And it's important to note that recently the trend for positive tests had been going downward both in Wisconsin and in Milwaukee, although over the last week we've seen an upward trend in the percentage of positive tests, and that's something important to note. Yesterday, like most early week, was a light reporting day with 5,612 tests reported in Wisconsin. And our testing capacity has increased significantly now to 18,425 per day, with 75 laboratories currently testing and 29 planning to test. Again, Wisconsin was a relatively light day for test reporting yesterday. We had a high number of positive tests, with 315 in Wisconsin, and that is relatively high for a Monday, also a 5.3% positive rate. We had 106 positive tests in Milwaukee with a 9.3% 7-day positive average, and both of those have actually gone up in terms of percentages. If you could go to the next slide, please. This slide shows hospital metrics, which are relatively stable. We've had a total of 3,407 hospitalizations for COVID-19 in Wisconsin since the beginning of the pandemic. And the percent positive tests that were hospitalized is about 12.1%. And that number's been going down since early in the pandemic, when if you had a positive COVID-19 test, you were about 30% likely to be hospitalized. We're now down at about a 10% likelihood to be hospitalized. That's probably because we have higher testing capacity and we're identifying people earlier in the course of their disease. Personal protective equipment trends are stable, with the current most critical shortages of paper masks, gowns, and goggles. Now, the graph shows trends in Wisconsin for COVID-19 positive inpatients in dark blue and ICU admissions in light blue. And you can see that there's a clear downward trend for hospitalizations and a stable to slightly declining use of intensive care units. Now, we'd like to see these trends continue, but remember that hospitalizations and ICU admissions lag increases in positive cases by 2 to 4 weeks. Next slide, please. This slide shows various COVID-19 indicators. Now, we're up to 777 COVID-19 related deaths in Wisconsin, with 354 of those occurring in Milwaukee. The demographic and ethnic predisposition for COVID-19 remains the same as we've seen before, with a predominance for Black and African American and Hispanic and Latinx compared to their respective population demographics in Wisconsin. But there are some trends that are worth noting. The percentages of deaths are trending toward white and Hispanic and Latinx individuals over the last several weeks. And the percentage of cases are trending toward younger and to Hispanic and Latinx individuals. And these trends are really worth watching. Now, the doubling time for positive tests in Wisconsin continues to extend out to 32.6 days and to 34.0 days in Milwaukee. The daily growth rate of positive tests averaged over the last 7 days, 1.6% in Wisconsin and 1.1% in Milwaukee. Now, it's also worth noting that that trend is increasing slightly in Wisconsin. Again, worth watching. The reproductive number in Wisconsin now is at an all-time high of 1.28, and it's been rising over 1 for 11 consecutive days. In Milwaukee, it's been holding steady at about 1.09 for the last 11 days. And it's important to note that this reproductive number was less than 1 for 16 consecutive days between June 2nd and June 18th. And ideally, if we're controlling the pandemic, or if it's shrinking or decelerating, we'd like to see that R number be less than 1. So this trend of an increasing R number is also worth watching. Next slide, please. This next slide shows the trend for reproductive number since early March in Milwaukee County in tan and Wisconsin in blue. And I'd like to call your attention to the right side of the graph, where both lines were below 1, as shown by dipping below the dotted red line. And that longest stretch during which R was less than 1 for both Milwaukee and Wisconsin was about 16 days. You see where the red arrow is. 11 days ago, both Milwaukee and Wisconsin trended up over 1. So this is going to be a very important metric to follow in the weeks to come. Next slide, please. This next slide shows the trajectory of the COVID-19 pandemic by plotting new cases in the last 7 days on the vertical axis versus the total cumulative cases since the beginning of the pandemic on the horizontal axis using a logarithmic scale. Milwaukee shown in pink and Wisconsin in teal. Now, a favorable trend would show a downward deflection of the plots. And if you look to the right side of the panel, you'll observe that there was a clear favorable downward trend until 11 days ago, as shown by the red arrow, when our favorable trends halted or began to stutter. Next slide, please. Now, this slide and the next one will summarize COVID trends over the last 2 weeks. Now, infections in states in the US South and Southwest are surging, and in fact, the number of documented cases is increasing in 48 of our 50 states. The demographic of infections is shifting toward younger people and the Hispanic and Latinx demographic, as I mentioned earlier, from Milwaukee and Wisconsin. Now, while it's possible that younger people are more socially interactive, both younger people and the Hispanic and Latinx demographic are more likely to be essential workers and thus more likely to be exposed to COVID-19 in the course of their everyday activities. There's also no definite impact of the protests yet, but that's something that's under active investigation. And we've also now know that the transmission of COVID-19 amongst children is about 50% less likely than in the elderly. And again, that's an important trend to observe, especially when we're considering reopening K through 12 schools. We also know that South Korea and China, which were doing very well, are fighting a second wave and new outbreaks, respectively. There's also mounting evidence that face coverings work. And I do just want to mention, it's really important as we go forward that people follow the 3 W's. Wash your hands, watch your distance, and wear face coverings. And we also now know that COVID-19 antibodies can disappear after a few months. So that has some implication for the long-term durability of immunity and the effectiveness of vaccines. It's possible that we may need to have multiple booster injections of vaccines. Next slide, please. Over the last week, the CDC has added 3 more COVID-19 symptoms: congestion or runny nose, nausea, and diarrhea, to bring the total of recognized symptoms up to 12. We also now know that asymptomatic patients with COVID-19 can actually have severe lung findings on CT scan. And again, this is a significant and stealthy disease that we need to continue to monitor. We also now know that COVID-19 causes cells to form infectious filopodia, or tentacles, as you can see in the sinister looking picture on the right. Those 2 extensions contain COVID-19 virus, and they could function to inject virus from an infected cell into an adjoining healthy cell. We also know that Milwaukee is planning to move to phase 4 of reopening tomorrow. And 7 states are showing preliminary signs of economic recovery, as indicated by a slowing of jobless claims. And those are Rhode Island, Michigan, Vermont, West Virginia, Montana, Pennsylvania, and Idaho. Now, the next 2 slides are presented for your reference. They contain the reference sources for the news of the last 2 weeks. And if interested, you can download the slides in PDF format from your handouts tab. So again, I'd like to thank you for your kind attention, and I'll turn it back over to Nancy.
Thank you so much, Dr. Raymond. We really appreciate you keeping us up to date on what we need to know. I'm wondering if you could share just a little bit of insight. You shared that we are seeing in 48 out of 50 states some type of resurgence. Can you give us an indication of how Wisconsin is faring in that pack of 48 states?
Well, we're faring better than the other states, but again, we are having a troubling increase in case rates. And anytime the R number stays above 1 for an extended period of time, it's a source of concern for us. Now, many people have hypothesized that the increased number of COVID-19 positive tests, especially since they're occurring in younger people, might be simply due to increased amounts of testing. But what we know is that in the United States over the last month, there's been a 9 to 10% increase in testing, but a 40 to 50% increase in the number of cases. So I think this is a factor not only of increased testing, but probably more so of more burden of disease.
Thank you so much. And again, Dr. Raymond will be sticking with us today for questions in the second half of the webinar. So we're going to bring you back to our panel for today. We have Dr. Vicki Martin, President of the Milwaukee Area Technical College, Sarah Dollhausen-Clark, Executive Director of IC STARS of Milwaukee, and Oscar Tovar, Vice Chair of the Hispanic Professionals of Greater Milwaukee, and Staff Assistant to Milwaukee Mayor Tom Barrett. Thanks again to all of you for joining us today as our panel. We want to start our discussion, and we're going to go around the horn here, and I'm going to start with you, Dr. Martin. Tell us a little bit about your organization, your role, and what you see in terms of the big picture of expanding our pipeline of talented, diverse employees in the Milwaukee region. Dr. Martin.
Well, good morning, and thank you, Nancy. It's really a privilege to be here. Milwaukee Area Technical College serves about 35,000 students, and you can go to that slide, each year. We offer more than 150 programs that are high quality and they're less costly, alternative to starting a four-year degree. We're about half the cost of a public four-year degree. And when you think about student debt, that's really important. We have transfer partnerships with over 35 universities and colleges, which have guaranteed admission agreements, and some of those include Marquette University, UW-Milwaukee, UW-Madison, UW-Parkside, and UW-Green Bay. And prior to COVID-19, we offered about 400 online courses, but this spring, we really were able to move over 1,600 courses online, and we're continuing in the fall. We're responding to student needs and prioritizing safety to make sure that about 50% of our classes will be fully online, with another 25% on a hybrid or mixed version of that. And about 15 to 20% will continue to remain fully in person with strong safety protocols. The remaining classes are apprenticeships and clinicals that we offer. We're also looking at a more flexible calendar, 8-week courses, 12-week courses, starting later, finishing earlier. Most of our students, about 53%, are students of color. Also want to mention that our employees also exceed the representation of diversity of our community. We are working to have it mirror for our employees more of our student population, and so that's the goal that we're going to be working on as we move forward. Next slide. I want to tackle two major issues today. How do we activate untapped talent and get students connected to our affordable, high quality programs? And equally important, how do we make sure they're successful and stay with us so that they complete their degree or diploma? So let's start with untapped talent. Next slide. In the district, we serve all of Milwaukee County, most of Ozaukee County, and Germantown and Washington County, but there are about 75,000 K-12 public and charter school students who are economically disadvantaged. There are also about 140,000 adults with some college but no degree, which is a great opportunity for us. So what we did is to reach these students, we launched our METC Promise program, which is a free tuition for eligible students program for students directly from high school, which came in 2015, and we expanded to our adult students in 2018. And the Promise is really a public-private partnership with private donors, helping to fill the gap between tuition costs and what federal and state financial aid covers. Our METC Promise has been very successful, and we've already reached 1,400 eligible students. Most of the students who came back to us with our Adult Promise program were our former students who had left college before graduating, and most of them, the #1 program they're coming back to, which is good news for all of us with COVID, is nursing. The next slide. And let's go to the next slide. We were able to start a new program. It's called the Restart program, which is a debt forgiveness scholarship program. We found that a lot of our students had stopped out of college with us because they owed some kind of debt. And we identified nearly 7,000 students over a 10-year period that owed less than $1,500. And if you can believe it, most of them earned $100 or owed us $100 or less. We've had very strong interest in this program. And so we're hoping that more and more students will be coming back to us and taking care of their debt and finishing up their degree. We also have, we're looking at the fastest growing population, Hispanic Latinx, and we're committed to officially becoming a Hispanic serving institution by the U.S. Department of Education by 2024 so that we can better serve our students. We're also working in terms of high school students to grow our early college partnership with MQ, which is MP, CWM, and UNTAPPED. We had originally started this model at Bradley Tech High School, which Oscar and I serve on the commission, and now we've expanded it across MPS, and we are doubling the number of students who are being served as part of that initiative. We are also a partner for youth apprenticeships, working with employers like Harley-Davidson and We Energy, along with MPS, to provide high school students with college level training and a door into adult apprenticeships as well. Next slide. METC is also proud to be the first college in Wisconsin that had the Second Chance Pell funding that really helps folks in correctional facilities to be able to access education. More than 90% of the inmates who finished training in our computer numerical control and welding in the last few years were released, and they found immediate employment. As well as many students who are incarcerated are taking our associate degree courses, and they are being very successful. They are, of course, finishing up at over 80%, but with a very high GPA, over 3.5 cumulative. The next slide. And METC has nearly 20 short-term certificates that offer a quick chance to skill up at the speed of industry, from accounting training to welding fundamentals. And these certificates help ladder into our technical diploma and associate degree. Our Workforce Solutions team also offers customized training to employers and offers them badges and micro-credentials in these areas, web development being the first one we're starting with. When I mentioned high school partnerships before, what we're finding is that high school students, and I'm going to give you one example, they'll start with the CNA training in their junior year, and their senior year, they'll take our LPN program, and they'll finish that up and come back for 1 year of RN completion. So if you can imagine, they would be ready to be an RN if they pass the state boards 1 year after high school, which is really a great deal. And we're strengthening internships. We're trying to find more and more, working with our partners, such as many of you out there, and a new co-op model, which is either current employees that you have that you want to reskill, upskill, as well as our own students who need employment that they can earn and learn at the same time. Next slide. So finally, we need to make sure that our students are successful once they start. So what we did is we looked at a proven national pathway model. We saw that Georgia State University eliminated equity gaps, eliminated the equity gaps for students of color, including the STEM fields. So we wanted to continue and make sure that we, even though we have a pandemic, that we have a place for our students to find their courses, get registered, address non-academic support like housing, food, and transportation, which we know are extremely important. So to continue that, we've joined a national network called Achieving the Dream, but their key focus is on completion, but also particularly the students of color and low-income students, so that they can continue and be successful. And so thank you for hearing me out on this, and we are very excited about our strategic efforts to build a diverse workforce pipeline, working with many of our partners who are here.
Thanks so much, Dr. Martin. So I heard you talk about the MATC Promise, the Restart Program, M-Cubed, the Pell funding, and some of the certificate programs, just to mention a few. And certainly all of those help students that have economic challenges, life challenges, and as well as address some mentorship and guidance that we know all affect the diverse pipeline. Oscar, let's go to you. If you can share with us a little bit about what you see in terms of the big picture, and then what potential solutions you might see out there as well for diverse talent pipeline.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me, Nancy, and I'm MAC. As Dr. Martin has mentioned, we partner up together with MATC a lot in the Hispanic Professionals Greater Milwaukee. And basically, the Hispanic Professionals Greater Milwaukee has been in existence for, it's unbelievable, 18, 19 years now. And it was kind of spearheaded by Nancy, to be honest with you, and then some other wonderful Latino women out there that saw the need for Hispanic networking opportunities back in those days. But it was a beautiful collaboration of Hispanic professionals. But as Hispanics grew in our region and our city, the Hispanic Professionals of Greater Milwaukee grew as well. So we started an actual nonprofit for it, and it was basically formed to the vision of showcasing Hispanic talent in clearly the Milwaukee region and area, and providing professionals with the support that they need to reach increasing levels of success in their careers. So it's been a great nonprofit organization. We currently have about 37 corporate partners in our pipeline. We have student chapters as well. We have about 12 different higher education student chapters that consist of MHCC, like I mentioned with Dr. Martin, UW-Milwaukee, Marquette, Cardinal Stritch, Alverno, WCTC, Carroll University, Mount Mary, MSOE, MIAT, and UW-Madison and Lakeland University, which we're also expanding those student chapters throughout the state. So it's not just going to be a regional program, but we're looking at definitely looking at Parkside and Oshkosh and Green Bay and some of the other locations throughout the state. So what we also actually do is we have what we call Conexiones program through HPGM, and those are basically breakout sessions at corporate and professional levels to show students the opportunities and to showcase what that company offers or what career options students have through HPGM. We also have another program through HPGM. It's called the Board Pipeline Initiative, and that's a partnership with the Greater Milwaukee Foundation. And it's basically committed to placing diverse professionals on local and regional boards. As we know, as diverse, you look at some of the boards and around Milwaukee, and it could be either nonprofit or corporate. It's lacking a little bit of a diversity. So the Board Pipeline Initiative trains individuals on covering the legal and guidelines of board service and ongoing project to build diverse pipelines in the region to serve on all sorts of different boards. Through HPGM, we also offer different scholarships for higher education students in undergraduate and graduate degrees. Last year, we serviced close to over $100,000 in scholarships to many students. And I think since the program started, we're close to about $600,000 in scholarships. So it's been a great success. And we also we commissioned a workforce study as well to take a look at some of the issues that are happening within the Hispanic community and in our region. So those are a lot of the main things that HPGM has been doing lately. And you know, it's been a little bit of a challenge during this pandemic because we've had to cancel a couple of different events, but or postponed, let's say postponed to different events. But we're looking at having our annual virtual luncheon in August to award those scholarships and awards to community members that are so deserving, but also having our annual gala in October, which raises funds for those scholarship opportunities.
Well, thanks, Oscar. And I'm very glad that they're not canceled, they're only postponed, because I look forward to those events every year. So I heard you say a lot of things there, and I think a lot of things that fit hand in glove with some of the programs that MATC mentioned. Certainly the professional development that you're doing, both with the student side and the professional side, as well as augmenting the financial resources available to students and the corporate partners. So let's go to Sarah, because Sarah, you kind of take that whole professional development side and, you know, multiply it, put it on steroids and multiply it ×3. So why don't you talk a little bit about what you see are some opportunities of expanding the pipeline of talent and what you guys are doing at IC Stars.
Sure. Thank you so much and good morning. Thank you for inviting me to participate in today's panel discussion. As you mentioned, my name is Sarah Dollhausen-Clark, and I'm the Executive Director of IC Stars Milwaukee. We are an immersive technology-based business and leadership training program, and our mission is really to provide access and opportunities for low-income adults who are underrepresented in the technology industry, and to train not only homegrown talent, but leaders who will in return invest in their communities and build companies that will create opportunities for others. So IC Stars has been in Chicago for the past 20 years, and in 2018, with the support of our anchor sponsor, Dome & Company Foundation, we expanded as a national organization and opened our Milwaukee office. So over the past 2 years in Milwaukee, we've trained 100 interns, graduated 80% who have entered the workforce with starting annual salaries between 40 to 60K. Since March 16th, with COVID and our pandemic, we have moved our operations and training program to a virtual environment. And we just recently graduated our 5th cohort of interns on June 18th. So our next cohort starts July 27th with our cycle sponsors and partners, Paylocity, Northwestern Mutual, Milwaukee County, and American Family Insurance. We pay our interns to learn. We provide volunteer, mentoring, and employee engagement opportunities for our partners, along with case management for interns and residents to ensure the transition and success to the workforce. We definitely have had some challenges with moving virtually, really more so in the space of not being able to host in-person events and networking opportunities. But all in all, the entire training program has been able to transition virtually. So we're looking forward to kind of continuing that trend through this year. And we will be hosting our annual Eye Opener Innovation Conference, which is one of our thought leadership conferences, in August. And actually this, instead of being just Milwaukee focused, it will be in conjunction with our Chicago office and kind of a national lens around a lot of different topics where we bring together CIOs, HR leaders, tech service providers, and our partners in the community to talk about different trends in technology, innovation, and to be able to connect and network with each other. So we see that, you know, as continuing throughout the year. But we also see great opportunities for our graduates in Milwaukee through our partnerships with Northwestern Mutual, Von Briesen and Roper, Kohl's, Mars Solution Groups, and many others. We have seen a shift in talent development, an interest in building pipelines for non-traditional candidates and hiring, and really a willingness to not only check a box for compliance, but a genuine effort to diversify the workforce and provide opportunities that may not have previously existed due to biased and outdated and/or restrictive hiring practices. But we also see challenges in those same areas and are hopeful that as companies begin to see genuine D&I initiatives as a business strategy, especially for those who compete at a global level, we will see a larger shift in hiring practices and additional attention and resources allocated to those initiatives. So we're excited to continue building our partnerships, building the work in our mission in Milwaukee market, and are always looking for partners to join us in those initiatives as well. So thank you for letting me be here today and speak on it.
Thank you, Sarah. And so it sounds like you're not only impacting individuals and moving them from $10 to $15 an hour into that $25, $28 an hour range, but you're also helping meet a workforce demand that really is growing in our region. So that certainly it creates a win-win situation. One of the things that I heard all three of you talk about is relationships with corporate partners, internships, the value of those. What role do you think can internships play in developing the competitiveness of our diverse talent? How can we expand these opportunities? And how do we remove barriers that students from diverse backgrounds often face in regards to internships? Oscar, can we start with you on this one?
Sure. I think everybody on the panel has had an internship, and that's why we are where we are, right? I think providing opportunities for students in Milwaukee in that internship opportunity is so important. Under the mayor, he's had this Earn and Learn program, which offers summer internship programs throughout the city of Milwaukee. Since that program has started, we've employed about 30,000 students in the summer. Unfortunately, those are just summer jobs. You know, we would love those jobs to be, throughout the year. But we dial for dollars sometimes for corporations to employ students. If it's 1, 2, maybe 5 or to 10 students, I think it makes a huge difference. But through HBJM, we do partner up with a lot of corporations to provide internships for our students as well. We are currently collaborating with the Hispanic Collaborative to increase those opportunities for many of our students. As the mayor always likes to say, everybody remembers their first job, especially the first paying job when you get that first paycheck. And I think each and every opportunity our students get to showcase that first paycheck gives them a little bit more motivation, to continue moving forward with their career and endeavor. So internships are absolutely very, very important. But I think in order to have those internship opportunities, I think a lot of our students and our young adults out there need mentorships as well. And through the mentorships, those could possibly be connected through internships. And it's, as the old saying, it's who you know, right? And not what you know in the corporate world sometimes, in getting those opportunities for them. So.
Sarah, how about you? How do we expand internships out there, those opportunities, or do we have enough?
Sure. I mean, I think we definitely don't ever have enough. I think that's an opportunity for companies to look at really developing talent, especially entry-level talent that can come in and really grow and be invested in the company's growth. I think, you know, our success has also been in providing supportive services. So as our interns are going through our training program, we are also providing things like, you know, life skills, mentoring, as Oscar mentioned. That's been a huge, I think, part of the success in hiring, that our employee engagement opportunities with some of our partners creates a mentoring opportunity and volunteer opportunities where those employees then become our internal champions for hiring, and also helping to shift some of those hiring practices. I think also just the idea, again, of building social capital and providing opportunities for interns to not only be trained, but to connect with leaders within their company, within the community, and other businesses, just kind of helps open the door and creates an internship that is much more impactful as well.
Thank you so much. And Dr. Martin, I'm wondering if you can share with us a little of your thoughts on internships. I know that many students at MATC might be working full-time, might have a job, but that might not necessarily be an internship. Can you talk about what your viewpoint is on that, and how you think internships help make students more competitive?
Right. Well, thanks. I'm going to echo a little bit of what Oscar and Sarah have already talked about, but for our students, especially now, when maybe they've been laid off just recently, internships are more important than ever. I think what it does is really solidifies career choices so that students really understand what the job really means and what that career is really all about. It also helps with soft skills. So I'll share a story about one of the youth apprenticeships at We Energies. A student got up when they had finished the program and said, "Oh, I now understand what work ready means. It means I come in the morning on time, I've prepared before I actually start, so I'm ready to go for the day." And the other thing that I think our students really appreciate is having that mentorship. I'll share with you as well, many of the students have said that it feels like a family. Doesn't feel as much like a job as somebody really cares about them, helps them through, understands what's needed on the job, but also in their personal lives, because their lives are so complex. And what we've told employers is this is a great way to grow your own, to really see what the talent that's really out there in our community, and to really develop them and help retain them as employees and support them as they continue their educational journey.
Thanks so much, Dr. Martin. So hand in hand with some of the internships and the education and the training that we're talking about, we could spend an entire hour or more talking on K-12 education here in the region, and some of the disparities that we see with that. We've certainly tackled that topic here in the past, and we'll certainly do so again in the future because of its importance. But how big of a factor is K-12 education here in the diverse talent pipeline, and what can we do about it? Sarah, why don't we start with you?
Sure, thank you. So I think, you know, one of the statistics we hear is when young girls are presented opportunities in STEM, science, technology, and education. And so I think that plays a role too in the K through 12 pipeline into certain industries, and really when different genders are being exposed to different educational and career opportunities. And so for IC Stars, we really see that pipeline starting as early as toddler elementary, when they are starting to make decisions about their interests. And we've been able to do some really great community-based projects where we're offering coding or gaming camps at Milwaukee Public Libraries, at some of the elementary, middle, and high schools, and really making sure that as our interns graduate, they understand that we are not just looking to provide more opportunities for underrepresented folks in the technology industry, but also really creating community leaders, both within their companies and in the communities, and identifying ways for our graduates to go back and mentor and really provide the pipeline as well for the K through 12 to think about non-traditional routes after graduation. And so sometimes that isn't introduced until it's kind of too late, or someone's in a situation where they maybe have been in a higher educational institute and have somewhat failed in that experience, not necessarily on their own, but just not being a fit for their style of learning, for their things that are happening in their life. And so I think also being able to introduce kind of the non-traditional routes that students can go through earlier on, and really understanding how like STEM and technology can be introduced as well to provide more interest in those areas.
Thank you, Sarah. So introduction early to STEM fields, and especially to kids or genders that might not necessarily get exposed to that. Thank you. Dr. Martin, what are some of your thoughts? How important is the K-12 education system when we start talking about the diverse talent pipeline?
Well, it's absolutely critical. And starting with 8th grade, and actually even before that, of really exposing more young people to a variety of careers that they may not even know existed, but also offering them some hands-on. We have different kinds of camps that we offer so that young people can really understand what's possible and where their interests lie, and then get the support that they need as they go on. So the career planning, so once it's solidified after the 8th grade and everyone starts understanding, I think, really introducing them to folks who are in those fields, especially engineers and others in the STEM field who are women, and women of color in particular are really important. We run a Girl Scout camp, and all of our female faculty participate in that. And I think just seeing that by young girls, so that they can really see that there's a whole world open to them and where their interests really lie, and give them the support that they need. And then once they get into high school, so make sure that they have the support and the programs, the youth apprenticeship programs, the early college programs, so that they are supported by the mentorship and the internships that we talked about earlier. So I think having industry really work with us, working with all of our four-year partners as well, to make sure that we're supporting the young people, especially in middle school and beyond.
Thank you so much, Dr. Martin. And I love the fact that you're doing the Girl Scout piece. I am a Girl Scout for life, so I think that that's wonderful. Oscar, we heard, certainly HPGM is trying to expose diverse students to different careers, and we've heard that the K-12 education system is important. What else can we do about it here? What is HPGM doing?
Well, HPGM, not just at the university or upper education level, we're getting involved in the high school level now as well, with some of the Milwaukee public schools. I think right now we're doing high school chapters in about 5 or 6 different high schools as we speak. So that's how we're reaching out to the younger generation, and that way we build that pipeline for them to continue on with us, throughout their college career, wherever they may lead. They may not choose to go to college. They may choose to go to the military, or they may choose to go to the MATC, which is a wonderful technical school. As Dr. Martin mentioned, her and I sit on the Bradley Tech Commission, and those are great opportunities for those students through the partnership through MATC. They get those technical experiences out there in the field with apprenticeships and so forth, through either construction jobs or different projects that are going throughout the city, especially in that Walker's Point area where Bradley Tech is located. There's been a lot of obviously development in the Walker's Point area, and it's wonderful to see that some of those students at Bradley Tech are able to walk to the job sites and get those career opportunities that they may explore at a later date. But HPGM does have a student chapter at Milwaukee Tech, and we look forward to expanding our chapters throughout not just Milwaukee Public Schools, but other area K-12 schools throughout the city. So.
Thank you, Oscar. So we've all heard about region of choice, right? And 100 companies through an initiative of the MMAC trying to expand the diversity of employees and managers in our workforce here. I'm going to give all of you guys a magic wand right now. If you could change one thing about the Milwaukee region to make a difference in terms of getting more talented, diverse employees into our workforce, what would it be? Let's start with you, Dr. Martin.
Okay, so one of the things that we've been talking about is when we see talented students, and we've done this in a couple of our areas with hard to recruit and retain faculty, we are going to be looking at our students and having them groom them and support them and mentor them to come back as our future teachers. And so for us, that's one way to do it. And I think that coming up through the K through 12 and also employers who see talented individuals, bringing them in, hiring them, mentoring them, I think that's what really needs to happen. And we've been actually successful in a couple of our key programs. I'm going to use welding as one example, where we've had really talented individuals. And then we actually had one of those folks teach at Bradley Tech, and they co-taught the course because at Bradley Tech we offer college credit. And so I think that those are the kinds of things that really have to happen. The kind of support and mentoring that we talked about earlier is just absolutely critical as we move forward. But I think really looking at our systems of hiring and retention and what do those look like, and making sure that we have anti-racist systems in place.
So thank you, Dr. Martin. So really looking at internal training, upskilling, identification of folks that can be shepherded through to assume greater roles within the organization. Great thought. Sarah, let's go to you.
Sure,
what's your magic wand?
Yeah, well, it's hard to put it down to one thing, but I think when we look at Milwaukee and we look at some of the negative statistics about Milwaukee, where it's one of the worst places to raise Black children, we have such high unemployment among African Americans. We really need to look at, when you're bringing a diverse workforce in, now that they're in your companies, how are you making sure that they feel belonging? And how are you making sure that you are addressing systemic and institutional racism and oppression, especially within the workforce, to be able to invest in those employees to make sure that your retention rates stay high. You know, it's not enough just to have D&I initiatives for hiring, but also looking at the way you are developing leaders. I think a Twitter user said it best: if it smells and walks like a PR stunt, it usually is. And so, you know, asking yourselves, do D&I initiatives involve not just entry-level roles, but are you also taking a look at your executive leadership and building a pipeline from entry-level to executive leadership to really promote and invest in diverse talent within your companies as well.
Thanks, Sarah. So I hear what I hear you saying is really looking at inclusiveness within the organization, those policies and procedures that really might hold us back, and how do we make that whole system really more responsible and effective for the training and investment that we're doing in people, really, as one of our critical talents for our workforce. Oscar, how about you? What are you waving with your magic wand here?
I would say location. We need more corporations here in the city, closer to where the workforce is actually stabilized, instead of way out there in the suburbs, where, you know, some of our workforce need to actually travel a little bit too far, and sometimes we don't have that regional transit authority or opportunities for people to get to those jobs. I think corporations need to come where the workers are, but also I think there's a little bit of a salary gap in terms of some of our diverse population. They tend to be a lower wage community, unfortunately, and I think those wages obviously need to go up a little bit more. But those are the type of items that I think will expand the opportunities within all of our communities, and it's for the greater good of the Milwaukee region.
Thank you so much, Oscar. So more corporations in where the people are living. Sounds logical, but thanks so much for sharing it. It absolutely would make an impact. We're going to bring back Dr. Raymond and Chris Jenkins with the MMAC. What questions do we have from the audience, Chris?
Sure, we have a couple for Dr. Raymond. The first is the idea that Milwaukee is on its way to moving to phase 4 as some other states are kind of walking back the openness that they've had. What's your take on that move right now, and what do city officials and businesses need to be aware of?
Yeah, really good question. Right now, our hospitalizations are not spiking, despite the fact that we have an increased number of positive tests and an increased percentage of positive tests. So as long as people adhere to the physical distancing guidelines, wear face coverings, and are careful about washing their hands, it may be worth doing. Again, if you want to have an excess of caution, you might say, let's wait. But right now, I believe we're on schedule to move to phase 4 tomorrow.
Thanks, Dr. Raymond. Another dynamic that's in play right now is a letter to the mayor that's making its way around asking for a citywide mask mandate. Do you have a take on that issue? Are there downsides to making it mandatory versus voluntary, or is it all upside?
Well, from a public health perspective, as long as people comply, whether it's mandatory or not, there's an upside. The downside is that it's become a political issue and one where people are weighing their civil liberties versus public health. And what I would say is what I've been saying from the very beginning in these webinars, we're relying on individual behavior to do the things that we know can help reduce the spread of COVID-19, and they're very simple. I mentioned the 3 W's earlier in the webinar, and those are wash your hands, watch your distance, and wear a face covering. And I would strongly implore people to do that, especially with the rising burden of case rate that we have right now.
Dr. Raymond, we also had a question about lessons we can take away from South Korea, which may be experiencing a second wave. Are there people who think that's because of the virus mutating, or is that more of some of the public policies they've adopted?
Yes, thanks. Good question. Unlikely to be due to the virus mutating. Again, it's really just when humans interact with each other, we can serve as vectors to spread the virus. And so, again, personal diligence and public policy are really important. Korea has a different culture, a different geography than we do, different rules, different willingness to sacrifice personal liberty for compliance with public health initiatives. So I really don't think that there's a whole lot that we can learn by comparing ourselves to them. They got on top of the pandemic much earlier than we did, and that's probably why they were more successful, at least initially, in controlling the pandemic.
Thank you, Dr. Raymond. For our other panelists, we had a question: what are some additional ways companies can create a sense of belonging for diverse candidates in order to maintain retention? Oscar, I don't know if you want to start us off.
Yeah, I can just touch on that just for a bit. I think a lot of corporations nowadays are realizing the diverse employee base that they have and are creating employee resource groups within their own corporations, which is a great thing. You tend to collaborate a little bit better sometimes with people that look like you or know your background. But employee resource groups are great collaborations that we do through HPGM, and that's who we reach out to when we try to recruit different corporations to join HPGM. We see what kind of employee resource groups they have for their Hispanic employees and how well those are run. So I think those are a major factor for including employees in the whole corporate structure for the companies.
Thanks, Oscar. Sarah, your thoughts on that? Retaining
Sure.
diversity?
Could you just repeat that one more time? My internet was going a little bit out.
Oh, sorry. It's the additional ways that companies can create a sense of belonging for diverse candidates in order to maintain retention.
Sure. I think for us, what has been successful, again, has been the employee engagement and volunteering with a training program like ours. So before hiring, they're able to really engage with talent and become champions from within. And so as they then enter the workforce, they have kind of those champions to be a supportive service for them or be a supportive ear, kind of help them navigate the systems that they're in and the corporate structure as well. So I think too, as Oscar mentioned, excuse me, the ERGs have been very helpful and very supportive of the work that we're doing, and also have been kind of a great resource for our graduates to go to when they are looking for those resources once they're placed in workforce.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Martin, your thoughts on that?
Yes, we're trying to do the same thing at our college, of making sure that we have a very welcoming and inclusive environment where people do feel as though they belong and they're part of it. And I think that we need to make sure that they can see themselves in our staff and in our faculty, but also making sure that the way we talk to our students, the way we listen to them, the way that we support them is inclusive, no matter their background or anything else that they are bringing to the table. But I think really that creating that safe environment is really important, where they can have that conversation and be listened to in a way that is very respectful and is really very sensitive to what their needs are.
Dr. Raymond, if I can ask you to take off your lab coat for a second and put on your president and CEO hat, what can you do, or what is MCW doing to retain employees from diverse backgrounds?
Yeah, thank you. We've already heard some great ideas. I think it starts with leadership, showing the value and their personal investment and having a diverse and inclusive environment. The culture needs to facilitate it. And right now we're really re-looking at all of our policies and procedures from different lens to make sure that we're not unintentionally creating an environment that isn't conducive to valuing diversity.
Great, thank you. And thank you to everybody who asked a question today.
And thank you so much for joining us today, and to Dr. Raymond and our panelists for a great discussion. It may seem like a long way off, or it may seem like right around the corner, but as we start thinking about economic recovery and growth, really the diverse workforce is key to what we're going through today in terms of a health crisis, economic crisis, and social crisis. And it's also very important to all of our economic growth in the future. If you are interested in taking a deeper dive into talent development, you should consider participating in the MMAC Talent Matters Summer mini-series. The series actually kicks off tomorrow with a look at the business case for upskilling and reskilling, which we heard some of our participants talk about today. Visit the website mmAC.org/events for additional details and registration. As a reminder, the MMAC will not host its regularly scheduled Tuesday webinar on July 7th. Tim, Dr. Raymond, and another panel of great guests will return on Tuesday, July 14th from 11 a.m. to noon. Thank you so much again for spending time with us today. We hope you have a great rest of the week and a happy 4th of July weekend.
Thanks, Nancy.
Thank you, Nancy.